How's it going, everybody? This is Dominic Minchella. I am the Kansas City Chiefs co-beat writer for On SI and the host of the Kansas City Chiefs Insider Podcast. As we are filming this today, we are so close into the new campaign for the Kansas City Chiefs and the National Football League as a whole. As we know, the Kansas City Chiefs will take on their AFC West division rivals in the Los Angeles Chargers come week 1 in Sao Paulo, Brazil. A huge and highly anticipated matchup that could show or make or break and kind of set the tone for the Kansas City Chiefs going into and throughout their entire campaign. This offseason has been filled with a lot of ups and a lot of need for improvement. I wouldn't necessarily call it ups and downs because the downs are going to always be a thing. I think that there's always, in my mind, I always like to say improvements. Everything can be improved. And I think the Kansas City Chiefs, they're a team that embodies that, and they know that they have areas that they need to improve on. However, for the topic of the podcast today, we're going to be talking about 3 players who need to carry over their preseason success into the regular season, starting off in the first week of the campaign. Now, keep in mind, it is a long season, and it will only, there's going to be high weeks and there's going to be low weeks. There's going to be weeks that are way better than others. However, for these players, a lot of the talk went around in the offseason and the way that the Kansas City Chiefs have handled them. They have emerged as players who could really benefit anywhere on this Chiefs roster, whether it be on offense or defense or special teams. But that being said, here are 3 preseason contributors who need to carry their success from the preseason into the regular season, especially in week 1. First off, one of the biggest offensive performers for the Chiefs this offseason was Tyquan Thornton. He's also the number 1 guy on my list who I am looking forward to seeing him continue his success in kind of a re-emerging season for him. You got to keep in mind that this is a former second-round draft pick. He's a guy who has the high ceiling, or at least had a high ceiling when he first came out of college. But now we've seen a lot of the ups and downs and the ups and the improvements and the lack thereof in Thornton's game in the past. He shifts over from the New England Patriots, joins the Kansas City Chiefs, and really earned himself a spot on this 53-man roster, especially in the wide receiving room, seemingly kicking out Sky Moore. If you remember me saying that Sky Moore ended up getting traded to the San Francisco 49ers, and that could have definitely been because there was an internal battle between Tyquan Thornton and Sky Moore, both former second-round picks, both guys that need to show that they are in a position to grow. Tyquan Thornton was a guy who had a great preseason. Sky Moore, on the other hand, it almost looked like his reign in Kansas City was coming to a close, whether he liked it or not. But this preseason, Tyquan Thornton had 83 receiving yards and 3 receptions through 3 preseason games. Now, the small sample size, his big game came against the Chicago Bears, where he had a 58 receiving yard catch. That had a big stay in where he was. But in the 3 receptions, he had brought in over 10 receiving yards per game, per those receptions, which is only a good thing going into the new season. While there is a lot of competition in the Kansas City Chiefs wide receiving room, whether Tyquan Thornton does find himself getting multiple targets on the offensive side of the football or is getting tossed in and around the special teams area, whether that be kick or punt return option, he's a guy that I am looking forward to hopefully carrying over his success from the preseason into the regular season. It would greatly benefit the Chiefs. It would allow Patrick Mahomes and Gardner Minshew another guy to rely on in the receiving game rather than just being lenient on Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown, just to name a few. Tyquan Thornton, he's a guy that I'm looking forward to seeing hopefully improve and continued his success. Number 2, brought back tight end Robert Tonyan. He had a great offseason, a great presence in the Kansas City Chiefs uniform while in the preseason games. And he's a guy that I think adds a lot to the tight end room. You might remember me talking about the tight end room for the Kansas City Chiefs yesterday on the podcast. If you didn't see that, be sure to go check that out. But Robert Tonyan, his success both on and off the field is a reason why he's back in Kansas City. He was a guy who got cut, but they brought him back because they need the depth. And he's a guy that Andy Reid has said, hey, you know what? He's a veteran. He knows what he's doing. And from a future Hall of Fame head coach in Andy Reid, saying that about a veteran player such as Robert Tonyan is a guy that needs to carry over his success should he want to remain as a prime target or a prime guy to lean on in the tight end room. A tight end room that features an aging Travis Kelce and hopefully Noah Gray, who steps up in a big way this season. But if that doesn't happen, you can have more reliability knowing that Robert Tonyan has had good seasons in the past. And I do think that from how he played in the preseason with the Kansas City Chiefs, there's not a whole lot that he would have to change in order to be successful at the pro level in week 1 and throughout the remainder of the season. And my last one is rookie Jeffrey Bassa. You might remember me talking about Jeffrey Bassa at the beginning of training camp. Man, he has looked great. A 5th-round pick from the 2025 NFL draft for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think that I've talked about this several times. He's a guy that when you look at the draft class, is a guy that gets overlooked a lot on paper. But when you see him on the field and the way that he's performed in the preseason, I do think that Jeffrey Bassa has a way of turning heads this season should he see himself on the defense or on special teams for the Kansas City Chiefs. There was one game, I believe it was the first game against the Arizona Cardinals for the preseason opener for the Kansas City Chiefs, where Jeffrey Bassa led the defense in total tackles. He was then also a contributing factor in the Seattle Seahawks game. And another, his presence is being felt. As a rookie, especially as a 5th-round pick, this is he's the guy where he has to prove he's either make or break. And so far from what we've seen in the preseason, he looks like he's leaning towards making it rather than breaking. I do think that he could be a grand asset for the Kansas City Chiefs, whether that be special teams or with defensive coordinator Steve Spagnuolo. But that being said, ladies and gentlemen, those are my first 3 preseason performers who I need to see or would like to see carry their success from the preseason into the regular season. If you like this, I can definitely do it again as we get closer to the regular season. But as always, be sure you follow me over on X at Dom Minchella. I post and repost every single day. You're not going to want to miss any coverage of the Kansas City Chiefs as we get closer to the regular season. And to ensure that, don't just follow me. Be sure you follow us over at KC Chiefs on SI over on X. All of our stories get published exclusively free to you. Kansas City Chiefs on SI is the place to get your Kansas City Chiefs news. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, I am Dominic Minchella, and I will see you tomorrow.